I just want to say thank you so much to the donors who enabled me to come on this trip. Like, it was an incredible trip. And I'm just so thankful that I was able to come because it was such an experience, like, with God and with the community, and just the way I think it shaped my outlook for, honestly, like, probably the rest of my life. And just, it was, like, an incredible experience the whole time. So thank you so much for supporting me. I chose to sign up for the 40-40 because it was just a lot of different, like, things, like, you rock climbing, mountaineering, and then just, like, hiking. And so it's just, like, kind of the accumulation of everything. And I was like, that sounds really awesome. And also it's just, like, 40 days away from the busyness of home and just, like, the craziness that is normal life, kind of. So I was like, and it's, like, a whole summer, and it fit perfectly in my time frame. So I was kind of like, this is perfect, and it sounds amazing, like 40 days in the wilderness, like Moses did and Jesus did. So I was like, you know what, that sounds incredible. So that's where I signed up for this course. So on this trip, I learned so much, especially about God's, like, faithfulness, and just, like, in little ways, like, literally, sometimes physically, I was unable to do things I felt, and then I would just be like, God, like, oh my gosh, like, you got to give me the strength for this, and he would be like, you got it, like. And it was just, like, at the end of the day, especially, it'd be like, look back and be like, oh my gosh, like, I could not have done that without God's, just, like, being able to see how God showed up throughout my day and throughout just everything, really. And then I learned a ton about community too. Like, we had 11 students, and we got super close, and it was just, like, really cool to see how God connected us all and how he brought us together when we were very different ages and, like, different places in life, but we were all came together and, like, had a really fun sense of humor, and just, like, were very positive, and God, like, moved in our community so much, and just, like, learning from other people, like, talking on the trails and talking just at night during devos, during check-ins and everything. That was, like, one of definitely the top highlights of my whole thing. And then as a leader, I grew so much too, because, like, we have leader of the days every day, and so I would get to be that every couple days. And then also just, like, learning to lead from other people's examples, like, especially my two instructors, Emily and Andrew. They just did, like, a stellar job showing us exactly, like, what a servant leader was and how to function in that, but also, like, letting other people lead as well, like, delegating kind of. We learned how to do that really well, and I learned a lot, like, when to speak up and also when to pull back. Like, when was my moment to be like, hey, like, 5 minutes or whatever till we're leaving, or hey, like, how can I help you in this journey? How can I, like, keep you going? How can I encourage you in this moment? And, like, that is, I think, the best way I learned to be a leader is, like, coming alongside other people where they were and not pushing them to be where I wanted them to be. That was, like, such a just huge eye-opener, just being like, oh, like, I can't expect this person to be what I want them to be. So as a disciple of Christ, I just learned a lot about, like looking back into the New Testament and being like, this is how the disciples functioned. Like, they were, like, one group, and they, like, we disagreed as a group, they disagreed as a group, but it was always, like, coming back, like, we know we want each other to look like Christ. And so, like, pulling people and being like, that wasn't Christ-like, or, like, that was so Christ-like, like, yes, go you, or just, like, the different, and just, like, learning how to get along and learning how to be, like, how to keep God at the center, and still, like, coming back to that, but also, like, having fun and, like, being ridiculous and, like, silly and, like, all the things like that. And then I think, like, with my personal relationship with Jesus, it grew through my community, but also just, like, being out there, just, like, at the end of the day, it was, like, God is always there. It was so prevalent. It was so easy to, like, see him in literally everything, because you look around and you're like, how does this exist? Like, God is there. And it definitely, just, like, he met me the way he met me personally in every day, and, like, throughout just random moments. I think that definitely also just, like, pushed my trust in him. Like, I just grew to trust the Lord a lot more through the whole 40. Yeah. So I think one moment that I felt really close to God was we, like, got up to this top of this pass, and we were like, it was supposed to be, like, one of our easy days, and we just, like, it was easy after we got to the top of the pass, but so we're like, okay, we're going up that pass, and we're gonna, like, run up it basically, and then we're just gonna, like, have a 10-minute break. So I was, like, hiking up this pass, and I was, like, dying, and then I got to the top right before you, like, go over, and we were, like, in a meeting spot, and I, like, looked back, and you could see just, like, this insane view. It was, like, Titcomb Basin, and it was just, like, you could see, like, snowy mountains in the distance, and then you could see just, like, beautiful green everywhere, and, like, I was like, God, like, oh my gosh, you did this for me, like, and it was just, like, so, I felt, like, so privileged to be able to see that, and then it was just, like, God was just, like, yeah, I did do this for you. Like, you get to see this today. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like up at the top of the mountain, like crying. And it was just like, it was so beautiful. And it was really, really cool. The most impactful part of my course, I think, is really twofold for me. First, it was definitely my community and just like the bonds I did get to have with everybody, and just like the fun and the really like serious too. And just like God showing up like through that, and other people like encouraging me and me getting to encourage them, and just like always, we had a very servant like hearted group. So everyone was always doing something for somebody else, and it was like really cool to see just how God like worked in all of us serving other people. And so that was super impactful, and just like really, it like built the whole trip. And then the other part was just physically, I came into this really stressed, and I was like, I'm not physically prepared for this. Like, oh no, it's gonna be bad. And then I got to like my halfway course point or whatever, and we did like our evals with our instructors, and both of my instructors were like, we are so impressed with like how you've done physically, and like we know that was really like nerve-wracking for you. And I was like, oh my gosh, like God really showed up physically, because I didn't know if I was gonna be able to do it, and like I was just like conking it out, and I felt like really, I was just like, this is like really cool to see how God has done that. And like I think that gave me a lot of like inner confidence too, of like physically I am able to do things that I don't necessarily think I can. My I am statement was, I was Martha, now I'm Mary. And it comes out of, you know, like the passage in the Bible where like Martha is like being really busy and like making the food, and then Mary's just like sitting at the feet of Jesus. And it like, at the beginning I was kind of like, okay, God, like I know I'm a really busy person back home, like whatever, but there's a lot of like roots of like unworthiness, and just like the ability to just sit and rest and like know that that's okay. And so I think that that is something I'm definitely going to implement. And it was like 40 days of resting, kind of, even though I'm not physically resting, but like just resting at the feet of Jesus. And so I think going back into my normal everyday like busy life is definitely something I'm going to take the time and like really just sit at the feet of Jesus and like know like I'm worthy, I'm allowed to be there, I'm supposed to be, like God wants me there. And just like coming back to that truth at the end of each day and being like, no, this is the truth. Like I am worthy, and like God wants me here. So my top 3 upgrades, I would say, are like knowing and recognizing God's faithfulness, valuing community, and truly like buying into that and being like, no, like it's worth it to share, it's worth it to be vulnerable and like put myself out there for this. And then my third one, probably just like resting, again, just taking that time to rest. And so I think going back home, it'll definitely look different, and just like I have a really strong community, but even building that stronger and like being more vulnerable and understanding where people are coming, like not expecting them to come differently than they are, like just wanting them to be who they are, and being like, no, let's like do this together. Let's do this whole like figuring it out together. And then, definitely I think just every day, like making that time to rest with God, and just like rest in his presence, and, you know, read my Bible, and like take time to think about him and who he is, and like just like, be part of that. And then, I just want to thank you guys again so much for supporting me and like letting me do this, because it really was life-changing and just an incredible experience, and I wouldn't have been able to do it if it weren't for the donors and the supporters. So thank you so much.